All right, y'all know the deal. It's Wednesday. We're going through every single game on the NFL slate as it relates to running backs for fantasy football. They're going to be categorized into one of 5 buckets. All right, we've got must start, strong start, dub flex, L flex, and the cone category. Must start, must be in your lineup. Strong start, very likely in your lineup. Feel really good about them. Dub flex, we feel good about them being in your flex. L flex are still dudes that I would be okay flexing, but I don't feel great about it. All right. They are flex worthy players, but we're on the pessimistic side of things. Cone is a cone. They're just going to be sitting in your lineup doing absolutely nothing for you. All right. Just directing traffic here. We've got a slight slate here because we got 6 teams on bye. Just a quick reminder, we got the Broncos, Colts, Patriots, Commanders, Ravens, and Texans. Let's start off with Thursday night football. We've got Green Bay in Detroit, over under 51.5. We're supposed to see some fireworks in this one, some sparks in this one. Now Detroit is 3.5-point favorites. I actually really like the Packers in this one. There's no running backs in here that you're not going to have in your lineups. Obviously, Jacobs is a must start, Gibbs is a must start, Montgomery is a must start, and the rest of the running backs on both of these teams are cones. One thing I will kind of just, pop out here is I like Jacobs's props this week. And I don't typically get into the props for these videos, but I try to stay within just the fantasy realm of things. For Detroit, their defense is so injured. I know that they're an elite run defense and they're very hard to run against. However, they are now down Aiden Hutchinson, Anzalone, Malcolm Rodriguez, and in this game, we now have DJ Reader with back-to-back DMPs, very likely not to play, one of the better run interior defensive linemen. Josh Paschal, D-end, and another one of their D-tackles, also back-to-back DMPs. So they are extremely shorthanded on the defensive line as well as just their defense in general. They get Carlton Davis back. They get some of their secondary pieces back. So I'd imagine Green Bay is going to go very, very heavy on the ground. This is the reason why you got a dude like Jacobs. So I like his rushing prop. In terms of rushing yards, in terms of carries, all that kind of stuff. But won't get too deep into it. But I think it's worth noting that Detroit is like severely hamstrung on the defensive side of the ball. We'll move to the Sunday slate. We've got Tampa Bay hot at home, 6.5-point favorites over the Raiders, 46.5-point total here. Nothing crazy from the Tampa Bay side. Obviously, Bucky is a must start at this point, top 10 guy going forward. Rachaad White, I think, is a dub flex here if they control the ground game, if they control the game script. Rachaad White has seen his snap counts and it's just like touch totals kind of decrease a little bit over the last couple of weeks as Bucky's played really well, but I still think they utilize him enough, and this is a good matchup. So Rachaad White would be in the dub flex category for me. On the Las Vegas side of things, a little tricky right now. We don't have any practice reports yet from the Raiders because those start to come out Wednesday around like 1 p.m.-ish. I'm filming this like 10, 11 a.m. on Wednesday. So we don't have nothing there, but we've had Madison and Zamir White miss each of the last 2 weeks. We saw Amir Abdullah act as the workhorse 2 weeks ago. We saw Sincere McCormick take a big jump up in snap counts and touches last week. It's a good matchup. Like Tampa Bay's defense is kind of a hole everywhere. It's really tricky right now. I said this in yesterday's video. I kind of feel like this is going to end up being the Denver Broncos backfield where maybe one player has a good game, but you're never going to be able to figure out who it's going to be. Alexander Mattison was limited all last week, so I kind of expect him to come back into it. If Madison is active, McCormick is active, Abdullah is active, they would all fall into the L flex category for me. I think Abdullah for me would kind of become unplayable. He would be more of a cone. I think McCormick would probably be L flex and Madison would be between L flex and cone. I think the one that's the most intriguing here is obviously Sincere McCormick because he's run really well, and we've seen Antonio Pierce, like he did last year with Zamir White, just hammer that dude into the ground over the last stretch of the season. So he's the most intriguing because nobody else is intriguing in that group. It's like when you go to a bar and you see a group of 4 girls. Sincere McCormick is like a 6, and they look great because the other ones are like 2s and 3s. All right, so it's not like an 8 sitting next to 2s. We're sitting here with an above average football player right now that has a little bit of intrigue just because of the pieces around them. If Madison does not play again, I still think I throw both of those guys into the L flex category. Don't ask me why I just spit. That wasn't funny. What the fuck soever. We're going to move on to Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, 6.5-point favorites at home against Cleveland, 44.5-point total. 2 relatively tough run defenses here. Pittsburgh with Najee, I mean, he's been very good over the last pretty much the entire second half of the season. Najee is going to go right into the strong start category for me. Jalen Warren's been getting touches. It's funny because like 2 weeks ago, I was like, he just doesn't get you 15 PPR points ever. That day, he got 15 PPR points literally that night. and then he was back to being Jalen Warren and just not as involved in the offense. When Najee's playing well, it seems like they just lean to him. Warren does get enough touches where you could warrant a start out of him in a 16 bye week, but he's going to go into the L flex category for me. On the flip side of things, Cleveland is getting tricky now because we saw Jerome Ford start to mix and match in way more than Nick Chubb last week, and this was Ford's most involvement in a game by far since Chubb has returned to the lineup. And they came out after the game and they were just like, Ford was kind of just a hot hand. He was playing well. He was making big plays for us, which is something that Nick Chubb doesn't really do. So when I think about going against Pittsburgh Steelers, an extremely tough run defense, obviously, I think with the split between Chubb and Jerome Ford, they're both going to fall into the L flex category for me. Jacksonville and Tennessee. We've got Tennessee 3.5 point favorites, 39.5 point total. Jacksonville is awful, so Tony Pollard will go right into the strong start category. Every time Tajay Spears is on the field, Pollard's like production, it gets a little bit too close for comfort, honestly, to throw him into the must start category. He is the one, obviously. He is a dude getting an insane amount of volume, but it does feel like Tajay starts to take some valuable snaps away from Tony that like just scrapes the cream off the top of the coffee there a little bit. So Pollard's going to be a strong start for me. Spears is going to be a cone for me. On the Jacksonville side of things, I don't see how you could trust either of those backs with Mac Jones under center. Even if T-Law was under center, I don't think I trust either of them to have good games. This is a good Tennessee front seven against the run here. Tank doesn't get more than double-digit touches anymore. ETN barely gets that. It's an unproductive offense with a bad offensive line that doesn't score a lot of points in a split backfield here. So they're both going to be on the borderline of L flex and cone category for me. Philadelphia, Carolina. Philly, 12.5 point favorites at home, 45.5 point total here. Saquon obviously shoots right up the chart. No need to discuss that. On the flip side, Carolina is a little bit interesting. Chuba's obviously been the workhorse here all year. Jonathan Brooks makes his return 2 weeks ago, doesn't play in that first game back. Last week, he looks a lot better, gets more touches, gets more snaps, makes some big plays, looks relatively explosive and elusive and sort of like the prospect that we were waiting to see come onto the field. That being said, Philly's obviously as good of a defense at this current moment as any team in the NFL. So we don't expect a lot of success regardless of Bryce Young turning into the prospect that we thought he was going to be right now. It might make Carolina move a little bit more smoothly overall, but like this defense is so tough. The game script is going to be abysmal for the running backs. I still think Chuba is going to be a dub flex for me. I know the matchup is really tough and Brooks is taking more work from him, but I still think Chuba's in line for 15 touches. If he gets a lucky goal line carry like he did against Kansas City, that was like the worry for him against that. He still ends up getting there for you for fantasy, and I think because the game script is so bad, they will have to utilize their running backs in the passing game a little bit. So we might have a reception floor for Chuba of 2-3 catches, which is a big deal in PPR league. So Chuba's going to be a dub flex for me. Brooks is definitely not getting into your lineup though. Atlanta and Minnesota. All right, Minnesota 5.5 point favorites. 46.5 point total here. Atlanta, doesn't matter that there's a bunch of red on the bottom of that matchup. Bijan's obviously a must start. Algiers a cone for Minnesota. Aaron Jones, strong start for me. Obviously struggled with some fumbles in recent weeks, so they had Akers getting a little bit more involved, but I'm not worried about Aaron Jones down the stretch here. He is the guy. He has been the guy. Gets a great matchup against the Atlanta Falcons here in a game script where they should play really well. They should be able to score. They should be able to move the ball frequently. I think he'll be involved in the passing game pretty frequently because Darnold will have time to just like pick his spots when the Atlanta pass rush just does not get to him. All right. Cam Akers, again, got a little bit more involved last week, but that was just purely based on the fumbles and the fumbleitis out here for Aaron Jones. So not worried about Aaron Jones going forward whatsoever. He's a strong start for me. New York and Miami. A lot of moving parts here. Miami, 6.5 point favorites. At home, 44.5 point total. I will just say Achane's a must start for me. Mostert and Jalen Wright have really done absolutely nothing on a week-by-week basis. They go straight into the cone category. On the flip side, Breece Hall, one of the more disappointing players over the second half of the year. He's had these spurts where like he gives you these runs of 30-point games. He'll have like one game here, one game there, and you're like, he's back, baby. He's like really never been back. This team is the furthest thing from back that I've ever seen. The Aaron Rodgers Netflix documentary is an incredible piece of irony that they are releasing at this point in the season. With Breece Hall's knee a little banged up, was limping on the sideline last week. This Miami defense is a little bit better than given credit for, I think. Breece Hall, at this point for me, definitely not a must start. He doesn't really score touchdowns. The goal line is like not happening. They're not scoring a lot because Aaron Rodgers is all over the fucking place. This team you just never know what you're getting on a week-to-week basis, except for the fact that they're probably not going to have a good performance. Brees is not a must-start. Brees is barely in consideration for a strong start. I'm going to throw Brees into the dub flex category. This is a week where you can absolutely start alternative players over Brees if you need to. I'm scared about the knee. I'm scared about the upside. I'm scared about the scoring opportunities for the Jets. I'm scared about just about everything, right? Like if Brees is hurt and this team just continues to just slide games off like a fucking rack of ribs off the bone here, like we're going to get times where maybe they have these players sit out. Like, what is the point of pushing Brees Hall right now in this point of the season? You obviously can't play anyone behind him, Braylon or Isaiah Davis, until he actually gets hurt or sits out a game. But for me, Brees is a dub flex, and like, there's no doubt about it. You're starting these other players like the Bucky Irvings and those type, and like the Tony Pollards over Brees at this point. New Orleans and the New York Giants. New Orleans 4.5-point favorites on the road in New York, 40.5-point total. This one seems pretty clear to me. Alvin Kamara is obviously like a top 3 back overall this week with all the injuries there. They get their offensive linemen back for the most part, so Kamara should have like 30 fucking touches. There's been some rumblings about Kendre Miller maybe getting back into the mix and activating him and letting him run a little bit. He might be a stash if you're in like a 14 or 16 team league, but he's not going to get any serious run in this game. For the Giants, Tracy didn't actually start last week. They said that it might be more of a split backfield, but at the end of the day, Tracy had more touches, more production, got home in the end zone. This is a much, much better matchup for the Giants and Tyrone Tracy this week. So Tracy, I'm not going to say must start because that's probably getting a little bit too cute, but he's a strong start for me. He is easily in that like, top the 12 to 17 range in terms of rankings for running backs. For me, Devin Singletary would be, I'll say an L flex because he might get like 10 touches in this one. Seattle, Arizona. We got Arizona, 2.5-point favorites at home, 44.5-point total here. For Seattle, Kenneth Walker's just been so boom or bust. I like the matchup. Arizona's defense has gotten better for sure, but they're still not great against the run. I'll throw K-Dub into the strong start category. Charbonnet is going to be an L flex for me. He has been getting more involved a little bit in the passing game, some short yardage, some goal line work. So I don't think he's full-on cone. And if Kenneth Walker keeps struggling, getting hit behind the line of scrimmage, there's a chance that we see Charbonnet see a little bit of an uptick in touches throughout the remainder of the season. So don't hate Kenneth Walker this week, but he's obviously not lived up to the player that we thought he was going to be. For Arizona, we got James Conner, who continues to operate as the workhorse. He has not had a lot of ceiling games lately, and Seattle's defense, again, another one. Actually, both of these defenses, I think, are two teams where, like, if you look at Seattle, Arizona, you kind of think of both those teams as offensive teams that could have shootout, kind of just like fireworks going on. And the fact that their over-under is 44.5, whereas you see a lot of other games, like New York and Miami, 44.5. There's a lot of games that are higher than Las Vegas, Tampa Bay, 46.5, Atlanta, Minnesota, 46.5. A lot of teams that you don't think of as much as offensive teams with much higher totals. And I think that is what Vegas is probably speaking to here, that they expect both defenses to play a lot better than the way that most people see them in their head here. So James Conner, still a strong start for me because he will get, 16 to 18, upwards of 20 touches if they can control the game script here. But, he's given up some pass catching work, hasn't scored a ton of touchdowns relative to like previous seasons and the amount of goal line work that he's gotten recently. The offense is a little bit inconsistent, but at the end of the day, don't think we can really overthink James Conner. He's still like the way that this offense runs. Chicago, San Francisco. We got San Fran, 3.5-point favorites, 44.5-point total here at home. Now, we'll start with Chicago. Roschon Johnson is in the concussion protocol. If he does not clear that, I think like San Francisco's defense has been awful. They are so banged up. They have so many injuries on that side of the ball. So DeAndre Swift for me goes straight into the must-start category. If it is just him in that backfield, take away any Roschon Johnson snaps, carries, goal line touches, like Swift will get there just by pure floor. Even if he's not a good inside runner, the amount of volume and the amount of just work overall he'll need to be in your lineup. For San Francisco, the only real name to mention here is Isaac Guerrero, hottest waiver wire name arguably at the position that we've had this year. With C-Mac out, with Jordan Mason out, Chicago is a very good matchup for fantasy running backs. One of the bigger problems here is Trent Williams being out. We don't know if he's going to be out again, but the injury is not healed well, they've said. He obviously had some personal tragedy stuff going on this week, so feels like a stretch to think that Trent Williams is going to play, and that's a huge downgrade to their offense and their running game overall. So I don't want to go crazy with Isaac Rendo. I just think when you start to like eliminate all the dudes in the depth chart and you just consolidate this workload to one player that is actually healthy and big and explosive, the ceiling seems to be super fucking high. So I'm not going to put him into a must-start category because I think that might just be jumping the gun a little bit. We have not seen Isaac Rendo get a full workload over the course of a full NFL game here. But, I mean, no one's going to be surprised if he does have a monster fucking game. I could also see him going like 16 for 60 and a touchdown without really catching any passes, one or two passes maybe. So overall, that'd be like a fine floor play, but not a great ceiling play. So I'm going to put him into the strong start category. I think if I have him, I want him in my lineup, but I don't think he's an absolute like must start if you have a 2 running back type of lineup where you have better plays to throw into your lineup and you have better wide receivers to flex or something like that in a full PPR league. Buffalo and LA. Buffalo 4.5 point favorites on the road in LA, 49.5 point total for Buffalo. James Cook must start, one of the better running backs in the entire league right now. Any given week, he could have massive plays, explosion type upside, even with Josh Allen taking a lot of the rushing touchdown work there. Doesn't matter. James Cook is incredible right now. Everybody else in that backfield, cone-ish, unless the game script goes incredibly in their favor, which I don't think is going to happen in LA. For LA, Kyren Williams going to continue to be a must start. It is a tough matchup. Buffalo's been a pretty good defense, a really, really solid defense as of late, but Kyron's a lock for 18 touches every single game and some goal line work. Chargers KC. We got KC at home, 3.5 point favorites, 42.5 point total. Tricky. All right. We got Pacheco returning for his first game back, showed a level of explosion that Kareem Hunt absolutely does not have anymore. Obviously, I think Kareem Hunt now, it's not a good matchup for these running backs, so it's not like we can think both of them can just get there by way of matchup, by way of game script. I think Pacheco will continue to see him get more and more play time. For me, Kareem Hunt's going to move into the cone category. I want to say Pacheco is a dub flex, but the way I'm feeling, right, if we get intrinsic here, if I have a lineup and I have to flex Pacheco, I don't know that I feel great about it, right? Like the dub flex category is like, I feel good about this dude in my flex. The L flex is like, I'm a little queasy. I'm a little queasy through the stomach intestines right now. And I kind of feel that way with Pacheco. He looked good. He looked explosive. You know what? End of the day, you guys convinced me, twist my arm. Pacheco, you're going to move into the dub flex category. I feel okay. Because I do think this is a week where we see a big jump from Hunt moving over to Pacheco, and we see a 60-40 split or 65-35 split for Pacheco. The other side of things, the Chargers, the matchup's incredibly difficult. Gus has no juice. Hassan Haskins is probably out of the picture. Kamani Vidal didn't really take that many snaps. I think the run game is just going to be something that doesn't work for them. This is a game where, man, if Ladd McConkey does not play, I heard a stat today that was like when Ladd McConkey is on the field, this team's passer rating and EPA per pass is top 5 in the NFL. When he is not on the field, they are bottom 3 in the NFL. So he is an actual needle mover and a difference maker in this offense. Not that really matters for the running backs, but I think Vidal and Gus are probably both going to be in the L flex, if not cone category for me. We need something to change. We need to see some sort of swing in usage. We need Vidal to get up to like 45% of snaps so that next week we feel okay about him. Because Gus has no explosion. He has no pass catching chops. He's, if they're not on the goal line, he's not going to score any fantasy points here. So I think they would be between L flex and cone category for me. I would feel pretty awful if I had either of them in my flex spot going into this week. Cincinnati, Dallas. We've got Cincy on the road in Dallas. Jerry World, 5.5 point favorites, 49.5 point total. Cooper Rush has this offense moving a little bit with Rico Dowdle. The Cincinnati defense is atrocious. Really bad secondary, really bad pass defense. Rico, I'm still going to throw him into dub flex category because we've been here before. Like every time Rico has a good game, he ends up having a disappointing game the following game. So it's like he's got a high floor. He's got a nice like 10, 11 point floor. If he doesn't score a touchdown, he more likely than not finishes around there. So he's going to be in the dub flex category for me. Chase Brown on the other side of things, obviously a must start, one of the better fantasy football players on planet Earth right now. All right. That is the running back preview for week 14. Playoffs are around the corner. My bacon, egg, and cheese I'm about to go get also around the corner. I will release this same video for the wide receiver position either later today or tomorrow. I'm gonna assume it's gonna be tomorrow. Tony's still a little bit in the garbage can right now in terms of his health. He's like Alexander Madison, starting to get some limited practice work in, but we don't know if he's actually going to be activated for the edit for tonight/tomorrow. So regardless, it'll be live before Thursday Night Football. So if you enjoyed this video, if you want the same thing at the wide receiver position, make sure you are subscribed. Hit the button that looks like this down below, and I'll see you when I see you. Smoochies.